The laughter at the dinner table was loud, echoing off the walls of my mother-in-law's grand dining room. It was one of those evenings where everyone seemed to talk over each other, the kind of family gathering I always dreaded. My husband, Daniel, sat at the head of the table, his voice booming, his confidence unshakable in front of his parents, siblings, and cousins. I sat quietly at his side, smiling politely, trying to blend into the wallpaper, just as I had done for years. But that night was different, because my husband did something I could never have prepared for. As the meal went on, Daniel leaned back in his chair and, with a smirk, said something that made my heart drop. "You all know I basically raised 2 kids," he chuckled, lifting his wine glass. "Between work, finances, and keeping this house together, I've been the real parent. Emily here," he gestured toward me with his glass, "well, she's just been more of a babysitter." The entire table erupted in laughter. Some chuckled awkwardly, others laughed freely, but all eyes turned toward me. My face burned as if someone had set me on fire. He was dismissing everything I had sacrificed, the sleepless nights, the countless school projects, the cooking, the cleaning, the very life I had poured into holding our family together. I forced a weak smile, swallowing back the lump in my throat, but inside, something cracked. I wanted to defend myself, to shout, "Do you even see what I do every single day?" But years of being silenced by Daniel's arrogance and condescension kept my lips pressed shut. I lowered my gaze to my plate, wishing I could disappear. My heart ached, not for myself, but because our daughter, Lily, was sitting right across from me. She was only 12, but old enough to understand the words her father had just spoken. For a moment, the room felt like it was closing in on me. I focused on cutting my food, though I had no appetite. I thought, just survive this dinner. Go home, cry alone, and move on. But before I could bury the pain, Lily pushed her chair back with a screech that silenced the table. Everyone turned to look at her. Her little hands were clenched into fists, and her face was red with anger. "That's not true, Dad," she said firmly, her voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Mom does everything for me. She makes my breakfast, helps me with my homework, stays up when I'm sick, and tucks me in at night. You don't even know what my favorite subject is at school." Her voice cracked, but she didn't back down. "You hurt her when you say stuff like that. And you're wrong." The room froze. Forks hovered in midair, and Daniel's smug grin faded as if someone had slapped it off his face. His complexion drained of color, leaving him pale and speechless. He glanced around the table, perhaps expecting someone to laugh it off or come to his rescue, but no one did. The truth in Lily's words hung heavy in the air. I felt tears well up in my eyes, but this time they weren't from humiliation. They were from pride. My daughter had seen me, truly seen me, in a way her father hadn't in years. She had given me a voice when I couldn't find my own. Daniel cleared his throat and muttered something about Lily, not understanding how hard he worked, but the damage was already done. His family, once so quick to laugh at his jokes, sat uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding his gaze. My mother-in-law, usually his biggest supporter, even reached across the table to pat my hand, a small gesture that told me she too recognized the weight of Lily's words. The rest of the dinner dragged on in awkward silence. For the first time, Daniel wasn't the center of attention. He avoided my eyes, his earlier arrogance replaced by a nervous stiffness. When we finally left, Lily slipped her small hand into mine and whispered, "I'm sorry I embarrassed him, Mom. I just couldn't let him hurt you like that." I knelt down and hugged her tightly right there in the driveway. "You didn't embarrass him, sweetheart. You reminded him of the truth. And you reminded me of my worth." That night, I lay awake beside a man who turned away from me, sulking in silence. But I didn't feel small anymore. Lily's words had planted a seed in my heart, a reminder that I was more than the role Daniel had boxed me into. I was strong, I was worthy, and I was not alone. In the weeks that followed, Daniel tried to brush off what happened, pretending it was just a misunderstanding. But something had shifted. He knew his daughter had seen through him, and that made him uncomfortable. I stopped tiptoeing around his moods. I started standing taller, speaking clearer, and making decisions for myself. And slowly, I began to picture a future where my voice wasn't silenced, where my worth wasn't mocked, and where my daughter grew up knowing her mother chose self-respect over humiliation. Because sometimes, the courage we can't find in ourselves is spoken through the innocent, honest voices of those who love us most. And once those words are out in the open, they can never be taken back. They linger, they heal, and they change everything.